Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timmy Kemza James. For those who are meeting me for the first time, in today's video I'm going to show you how to draft this lovely corset dress that you're seeing here. So in another video we're going to be sewing it as well. So first off, I'm going to mark 5 inches away from my pattern paper. So that 5 inch is going to be from the armhole to the chest line where my blouse is going to be starting from, right? So after that 5 inch, I'm going to mark 7.5 as my armhole line. Then I'll mark my shoulder to my bust point, still holding my tape from the 5-inch point, right? Then I'll mark my bust point, my under bust and my waist. Then I'll go ahead and draft that into straight lines. So in case this process gets you a little bit confused, I have a tutorial on how to draft a basic bodice pattern. So that's the exact same thing I'm going to be doing, or your off shoulder pattern, whatever. So I'm going to be linking it below for you in case you've not seen that video, right? So, or if you know how to do a basic bodice, that's just what I'm drafting here. So now on the bust point, I'm going to be marking my bust span measurements for the client. So on the waist side or the hem line of the blouse. So I'm basically drafting it as a blouse first. I'll be marking my bust point as well. Then I'm taking 1 inch on both sides for my dart, like I normally would do on the under bust and on the waistline. So I'll be connecting these two lines together, and I'm going to go ahead to draft out my dart, connecting it to the waistline or the hem, and then as well to the bust point. So my dart is pivoting towards the hip, and also the other hem of it is pivoting towards the bust. Now on the upper line, which is the chest line, I'm going to be marking 5.5 inches. Then I'll do 1 inch on both sides as well and connect it to the bust area. Now I marked my bust point on that point to be 5 inches because I usually do not like my bust line looking straight. So I like it a little bit slanted on the upper side of the blouse. That's why I did that, right? So now on the armhole line, I went ahead to mark 1/4 of my bust measurements because I'm working on 1/4 of my body right now. And on the waistline and the hip line or the blouse length, I did the same thing: 1/4 of my bust, 1/4 of my waist, and 1/4 of my hip measurements. Then I went ahead to connect. Now to bring us further, I'm going to be marking that dart that I took. I'll pay it back wherever the dart is. So you know that at depth. So if you've been with me on this channel, you should know that by now. So I just went ahead to connect all my lines together, and then now from my bust point to my under bust, I would measure it, and then I'll mark the same thing on the upper side. Now because I want the bust to be a little bit covered, my bust to under bust is 3 inches, but I'm using 4 inches on the upper side, right? So from the bust point to towards the chest area, I'm marking 4 inches, and I'm just going with that 4 inches round up to the point where the 4 inches can fit, right? So now on my center front line here, the bust area, I'm going up towards the armhole, or I measure from the armhole downward. I will measure 0.5 inches down. Now that's going to be for the core of the corset area, or the core of the cup side, right? So I'll mark 1/2 inch inwards from that 1/2 inch that I measured downward, and just go ahead and connect it as a straight line like so. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is to shape the cup, right, towards the 4-inch point that I marked. So I'm just going ahead to mark that 4 inches closer to the core area. So that's me trying to draft out the cup. So I'm just carefully going ahead to trace off a line that I find suitable for my cup. Now, in as much as we try to give you like measurements to help you on how to make your cup, there's actually no specific way that you must make your cup, or there's a standard way that your cup has to be. You can just shape your cup whichever way you like, right? but we are just giving you this as a guideline so it will help you. So it doesn't have to be 4 inches, yours can be different, and you can see so many others having different lines, right? So if you look at my own now, I'm not bringing the measurement all the way to the point where that my that leg is. Reason is because I usually don't like, most corset you see has some sort of like a sharp line on that point, which I don't like. So I'm basically shaping it best to how I find suitable, right? So you can see, in as much as I was measuring 4 inches on this side, when it got there I had to like divert my hands on the with the pencil so that it doesn't really sit on the 4 inches, because the 4 inches didn't really sit well the way I would like it, right? So I'm basically just tracing it, and you should just trace it the way you feel more comfortable with. So I usually like to see my clients when I'm drafting corset, so I know how the nature of their bust are. So when you have other people who have bust of, let's say, 36, you can see someone that has bust of 36 but his cup is very small compared to that of 36. So that's why I like to see my clients, even if it's through video call, so that I know the nature of your body. Are you wider on your body, or you have a fuller cup? That's why you bear the bust measurements that you bear. There are other ways to find that out, but I'll discuss that in another video. Now I just placed my tape down on back on that 5 inch of the off shoulder area where I left it, just so I know how deep my corset is going to be. So I marked 9 inches because I wanted 9 inches. Then I went to retrace the core again, and also to reshape the cup. So that's basically to know the depth of your neckline, right? And if you want cleavage. For these clients, they don't want cleavage, so they are very conservative. So that's why I made it 9 inches, and I raised the cup up to be 4 inches, if you remember when I said that. Now I went ahead to just extend my dart leg. I want to extend my dart, then I go ahead and reshape my dart. So from the bust point I came down by 1 inch, and I'm just going ahead to reshape my dart. Right now, that other shape that I added 0.25 there, and that's because I just use that for under bust tightening, right? Then I also took extra dart on the chest side of my cup. Reason is because I want it nice and snug on the upper side, so I'm just going ahead to like give it a smooth trace. So that's why I had dash lines in the first place. So I just went ahead to trace it nicely. There are several ways of making cupped corset, guys, but this way I find effective, right? Or efficient, or what's the English again? I just find it this easier, and it sits perfectly. So that's why I'm using this method. You can go ahead and use any other method, so that I don't have people telling me that's not how I do mine, that's not how I do mine, because some people can really be something else in the comment section. So this point I'm canceling out at that line, just to let you know that I'm not going to be cutting that side, right? So I just went ahead to trace off my panels nicely, and then on the armhole side I'm coming down by half of an inch, because I'll be adding illusion neck on the upper side of the blouse, but that's not even the issue, right? I didn't want the corset like being tight on the armhole side. That's why I came down by that half of an inch. So after doing that, I'm going to come back to trace that off, but before then I'm going ahead to label my pattern before any cutting procedure. Now I just went ahead to label my patterns all round, right? So this is a center front cup, and then the side front cup. I have the side front and center front also on the main bodies, right? So don't forget to go ahead and mark your grain lines. So I just marked my grain lines and on the cup side as well, and then I mark the grain lines on the main fabric as well. Now I'm going ahead to reshape that to meet that half inch that I came down on the armhole side. And that is it, guys, about the front drafting. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure that my line where I'm going to be joining it to the other side. Then I'll pick the same point on the tape to measure, so that I'll be sure that all my lines will meet by the time I come to join the panels together. Now you have to be careful doing this, so you can see this one does not meet, so I just marked the point and I'll measure what I have left. I have about half of an inch, so I'll just go ahead and extend the upper side of this center front cup to that half of an inch, and then I'll trace it in and I'll redraw the cup edge, right, so that everything sits nice by the time I'm done. So at this point I'm done with the basic drafting, although I'm going to go ahead and cut it. But before then, I would also label my extended pattern paper so that I can draft the back. Now by the time I'm done cutting it, I'm going to join my center front and my side front. Now the reason is because I want my style line. I do not want this straight regular style line. I want the style lines to be slanted, so I'm going to be taping down this pattern together so that I reconstruct my style line. Now on the side seam side, I'm going to go ahead and mark ½ inch inwards on the waist side and connect it to the upper side and the hip side and take in that dart so that it slims my waist. Don't forget, this is a corset, and I do the same thing on the center front. The center front one is optional, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and mark my style lines that is most preferable to me. So you can just draw your style lines anyhow you want it. So I just want it to be slanted, so I labeled it and I'm taking ½ inch on each side of my panel, right? Now don't forget, it was my exact measurement that I used. So now I'm taking out this dart and I'm not going to pay them back, because that's going to be what will enable my waist to be snatched when I'm done. So that's me taking out measurements for my actual measurement so that it's tiny by the time I'm done, right? So I take ½ inch on every side. So when you calculate, that's ½ inch. So I have ½ inch in front, ½ inch on each side of these two other side. So when you have the left and right side, that's a total of 3 inches. Then the ½ inch on the side seam, that's a total of 4 inches on the front side, right? So that's what I have basically. So I would like to tape this paper down so that you see what the cup looks like, but because I'm using a cardboard paper and cardboard is hard, so it's not flexible enough for me to tape for you to see. So that's definitely not going to be possible. So but basically you can see what my cup looks like. So at this point you just eyeball it to see if it's something you would want to reshape in any way possible, right? So back to my back measurement. So I'm just measuring from the other side of the cardboard to this side so that I draw a straight line and I have it straight so that I can know where I'm starting my drafting from. So now that I have my straight line here, I'm just going to go ahead and chop off the excesses on this side, right? So this point is going to serve as my center back measurement. So on my armhole side, I just marked a quarter of my bust measurement, and on my waistline a quarter of my waist measurement, and on the hip line the quarter of my hip measurement, just like I did to the front. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect my lines, but I'm adding 1 inch for that allowance, right? Because I'm going to be taking that, in as much as I'll be subtracting a lot more, I just added that. So I double checked with the side front of my body, so that, because I'm going to be sewing them together, so I just want everything to be seamless. That's why I'm checking that out. So on the waistline I'm going in by 1 inch, so that it's, now that's me taking out from my measurement so that it slims my waist better. So on my on the upper side I took 1 inch as well, because when I strap it I want the upper side to be sort of opened, right? So I'm going to be dividing my back side into 2 equal parts, which is going to be one of my style lines, right? So you can decide to have a straight style line at the back or slanted one, just like I did in front. So I just went ahead to mark my darts as well, right? Then the number of darts basically depends on you. So I went ahead to draw out my darts, and I'm going to reshape my neckline. So I just went to trace off the neckline as possible, and I added my grain lines. So you can have more style lines at the back, it's totally up to you, right? So by the time I'm done, I'm just going to add another dart on the waist side so that it eradicates zip bulge. Even though this is a corset, it doesn't have zip, but you don't want excess fabrics around your waist area, right? So I'm just going to cut out my main pattern out. Before cutting out the dart, I'll have to tape in that dart on my center back, right around the waist side of my center back. So that's what I'm just taking out, and I'm going ahead to tape that down. So by the time I'm done taping that down, I'll just go ahead and cut out that dart at the middle that you're seeing, right? So the dart on my style line, I just went ahead to cut it out like so. And don't forget to do that neatly, especially the fact that you taped that area, you're most likely to make errors there. So this is my back, my center back, and the other side is my side back. Then I have all my patterns here, you can see. So I went ahead to cut out my fabric, but first off I went to add hairstay or any fusible interfacing on all my fabric pieces before I cut them out. So when I'm cutting, I'm going to be leaving half of an inch sewing allowance all around my panel, right, except for the top and the except for the top side. I think I ended up adding at the top side, yeah. So I added all sewing allowances, and this is what I have, except for the cup that I didn't add sewing allowance. The reason is because I'm not going to be using the same fabric for the cup, and the style line on the front side of the cup is going to change. So I went to cut out sew down the cup like so, as you can see. Then I'm going to use this as a pattern so I can recreate the exact style line. I just want a this is actually a vertical measure cup right now, so I'm going to make it horizontal, and I'll adjust the shape of my bra cup, just like I said earlier, that if you have a problem with it, you can always adjust. So because of that that I took, I took in extra there, I'm going to need to extend it on the other side. Now no matter the expansion I'm going to do, I will have to measure around the cup and make sure that that same measurement is what I have when I've extended it. And the reason is because I'm going to be joining it to the main bodies, and that's the measurement I have there, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and mark the line where I want to have my style line, right? So it's just my style line that I'm basically finding. There is no hard rule about this one. Just look at what I'm doing and just follow suit if you want this style line. But if you don't mind this horizontal this vertical style line, it's fine, you can go ahead and leave it, but I prefer the horizontal one. So I'm marking my style line. Now what you want to do is to mark to get to the nipple point of your bodice, right? And then I also want to open it to create more room for the buds, because the owner of this corset is a little bit more busty than usual. So I just done not more busty than usual, but a little bit more busty than what I have on this cup. So that's why I'm just opening part of the seam a little bit to allow more room for the bust. So when I'm cutting on the main fabric, I'm just going to go ahead and follow suit, including that adding sewing allowance. So now by so doing, I have two panels, but my line has come back to being horizontal. instead of vertical. So now I'm just going to go ahead and trace this with my chalk and add my sewing allowances like you can see me do. Now I'm going to eventually use this as the lining because I'm using the fabric I'm using is for the main bodies on the cup side, is not this one. So I'm just going to double check my measurements and everything, then I'll cut it out, and that's it about the cup. So at this point you can go ahead and cut, and after cutting you label your center front, your back side front, and you put in your green lines or arrows so that you know which side faces which side. Don't forget to do this because it can get really confusing. So when you're done, that will be it about the cutting. So I'll see you in my next video where I'm going to show you the sewing process. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up guys and share my video.